Good afternoon. Welcome to Salisbury Cathedral. My name is Robert Titley. My job I have at the Cathedral is that of Canon Treasurer. And more particularly, as we are on Earth Day, I'm the member of the Cathedral clergy who holds the lead responsibility for our care of the environment. And I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to be in discussion today with someone who will have some quite pointed things to say about that. Professor Myles Allen, good afternoon. It's lovely to be able to be in conversation with you. We were hoping we could invite you into the In Real Life Cathedral for the Salisbury Conversations, particularly the evening's debate on climate change. COVID-19 has overtaken that as it has overtaken so much. And so we're really grateful to you for being able to be in with us this afternoon. Where to begin? I read in the paper a couple of days ago a remarkable quote by Lenin. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And we seem to be in a series of those weeks at the moment because of COVID-19. You've said something really rather arresting about that, Myles. You've said you hear people saying that COVID-19 is tough, but it's a pushover compared with climate change. I think you've said something almost to the contrary, that COVID-19 is a harder thing to crack or to solve or to overcome, harder than it will be to overcome the effects of climate change. If I've got you right, it would be wonderful to hear a bit more about that.
Well, to be precise, I'd say that it could be to address climate change. We can make dealing with climate change as difficult as we wanted to make it. So we could make it really difficult. But there are ways of dealing with climate change that would be potentially much less disruptive than what we're having to do to deal with COVID-19. I mean, COVID-19 involves everybody in the world radically changing their behavior. We're all going through this at the moment. And success depends on the lowest common denominator. It only takes a small minority of the population to not comply with guidelines to keep the whole epidemic going. So climate change is a very, very different problem. And I do worry about the cartoons I see on the internet sort of suggesting that, you know, flattening this curve is going to be child's play compared to that enormous curve that's coming, which is climate change. We don't need to change the behavior of everyone in the world in order to deal with climate change. And I actually firmly believe that the ethical way of dealing with climate change is not asking everyone to change their behavior, but to go upstream, if you like, and to turn to the companies that are responsible for selling the products that are causing the problem and place the onus on them to sort it out.
I'm going to do a bit of flag waving here for the Church of England. The Church of England Pensions Board, an organisation in which I'm taking increasingly close interest at this stage in my career, is a big investor, and they're part of a network of investors that have controlled trillions of investment funds overall. And this consortium has managed to get Royal Dutch Shell to commit to being carbon zero by 2050, the Paris climate threshold date, I think. Is that the sort of thing that you've got in mind when you say we need to move upstream?
Well, it's progress. To be fair, Shell is saying their own activities are going to be carbon neutral, but they're not saying they're going to be selling products that will be carbon neutral.
Okay.
And in a net zero world, that's not going to be good enough. I mean, for companies to sort out their own emissions is, if you like, the least they need to do. But if they're still selling products where the people buying those products have absolutely no alternative but to burn them and release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then their business model is still causing climate change, even if their own immediate activities are not.
Right.
So we need, we need these companies to go beyond that, and other companies in the oil and gas sector have actually stepped up and made an aspirational goal. I think they're going to have to admit they don't quite know how they're going to do it yet, to actually take care of the emissions associated with the products they sell.
It sounds like you think this is achievable as well. It's not just it would be great if that were possible.
It could be done. It could be done, but it will make fossil fuels substantially more expensive, not unrecognizably more expensive. So, for example, for Shell to entirely clean up the carbon dioxide generated by a litre of petrol that they sell would cost them, with today's technology, that's to take that carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere. So you driving your car would burn the petrol as normal, but Shell would take care of that carbon dioxide, take it back out of the atmosphere, make sure you weren't causing global warming. That, with today's technologies, would cost about 50p a litre. Now, 50p is quite a lot on a litre of petrol, but we don't have to go there immediately. We've got 30 years or so to get there. And at a time when actually oil prices, they were negative yesterday. I mean, fossil fuel prices are all over the place at the moment. We may well be going into a decade of very low fossil fuel prices. And I think it really represents an opportunity.
And this is the direction you go in, rather than saying, as some are saying to the Shells and Exxons of this world, leave it in the ground. We can't afford to burn the stuff you're about to extract and process.
The carbon content of those fuels has to stay in the ground.
Yeah.
The question is whether people, these companies, can work out a way of extracting the energy from those fossil fuels without dumping that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. They have to do that.
It's Earth Day. I work at Salisbury Cathedral with particular responsibilities for our environmental behaviour. What's the one thing you think we should do?
I mean, there are things which we can do, but in the end, I think you would do most by recognizing that the fossil fuels you're still using need to be fixed, and going back to the company that's selling you them and saying, could you please sort this out, because we have to keep using your product and we're not happy with the fact that it's causing global warming.
And you know, say we're prepared to pay something for that.
And of course they would say, well, we can only do that if you pay more. And you say, yeah, that's fine. We're willing to pay more. And then start. And you know, some of these companies have already stepped up and said they're going to do this. But then you've got to get on them and say, is it real? This is where the church, not just as an investor, but as a customer, I think could have a sort of disproportionate influence by saying, look, we just want a safe product. We don't want to be using this product that's causing global warming. So I'm pressing my university on this as well. I mean, and again, it's causing a bit of head scratching around it, because there's no such thing at the moment as safe fossil fuels. But I think if enough big institutions start grumbling that we can't buy what we want to buy, and we're willing to pay more for it, if somebody would step up and sell it to us, then maybe things will change.
There's an interesting parallel with the fair trade movement about 20 odd years ago. Very similar things. Well, you know, it would never work because people wouldn't pay the premium, and a lobby grew. It was faith groups and others, and now it's just part of the retail furniture.
Exactly. I mean, you know, it's possible to imagine a transition in which by mid-century, it's simply unacceptable to use fossil fuels that aren't carbon neutral, and it's unacceptable to buy products that have been made with fossil fuels that aren't carbon neutral. I mean, you can sort of imagine that future quite easily, and you know, it wouldn't be particularly traumatic. I mean, you know, some things would get more expensive. Sure.
50p a litre, right? That's my take home.
Yeah, it's not
bigger on that.
It's big, but it's not.
It is big, but
it's not outrageous.
It's not £5.
Exactly. Whereas if you wanted to if you wanted to sort of go the tax route and tax people to stop them using their cars entirely, then you'd probably be talking about a lot more than 50p a litre. And that's the difficulty, is that's the way people tend to think about it at the moment.
Professor Myles Allen, it's been a delight. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much.
Happy Earth Day.
Thank you. Happy Earth Day to yourself.